I recently purchased Arc Raiders. Now, as a marathon fan and a marathon diehard, that might sound like I've just committed the greatest treason of all time. However, I want to explain a little bit why, my time with the game, and how I think it compares to Marathon, and how, if you're a fan of one, should you try out the other, and vice versa. So first off, the reason I bought the game was quite simple. My friend had recently picked it up a couple of weeks back, and he's been talking about how much fun he's had with it, and he decided to make an agreement with me out of the blue that essentially after me, talking a lot about Marathon, the agreement was essentially that he will buy Marathon if I buy Arc Raiders, and I want everybody to play Marathon, so I agreed with that, and I purchased Arc Raiders, and I've got about 3 to 4 hours of playtime now, but obviously it's nowhere near enough what somebody would need to make a full review. But I want to kind of do the opposite of what people have been doing the other way around, where people have been playing a couple hours of Marathon and then comparing it to an Arc Raiders player's experience. I want to do the opposite. I want to talk about Arc Raiders as a Marathon player's experience. And I kind of don't want to script this video, so I haven't written anything down. I'm kind of just going to go straight for the throat and just go buck wild off the top of my head. And the first thing I want to talk about, and it's kind of the easiest, band-aid to rip off, is did I have fun, and am I having fun with Arc Raiders? I would say, yeah, quite a lot of fun, actually. I would say it's a very different kind of fun to a game like Marathon, and as much as my friend isn't here, we've talked a lot about comparing the two, since obviously we have the two and we play a lot of the two, and we both kind of agree that they are fun for very separate reasons. Now, what do I mean by that? It doesn't take somebody with a billion IQ to understand that Arc Raiders is significantly more of a game that leans toward a PvE type of category of extraction shooter compared to Marathon that is significantly more of a PvP lean. Now, I will say, coming from Marathon to playing Arc, that is really, really interesting. Out of my 3 to 4 hours of playtime, like I said, I have only really gotten into one PvP fight, and I wouldn't even consider it that much of a PvP fight. It was a guy on a roof with some of the worst accuracy of all time, using some sort of DMR or a sniper rifle, I wasn't sure. And when I was trying to head to an exfil, he shot his first bullet, and he didn't hit a single next one, and I did shit talking in game chat, I'll happily fucking say that. I called him a shitter, because he couldn't hit a single bullet. Well, actually, he could hit a single bullet, but he couldn't hit more than a single bullet. And then another time was during the exfil between me and 2 other raiders. Some guy shot at me a little bit, but it was too late for it to knock me or kill me or anything, so I'm not really counting it. I'm pretty sure they knew what they were doing. And comparing that to Arc Raiders Marathon, is really interesting. And I'm mainly making this video because I came hot off of playing Arc for about an hour earlier with my friend, and then going to immediately playing Marathon with him. And since he's so early in Marathon and I'm so early in Arc, we're both doing kind of early game easy things. He's, for example, in Marathon collecting unstable biomass and unstable diodes, and I and Arc are trying to get olives and peaches so I can upgrade my Scrappy. So it's quite interesting because all of our runs that we've been doing across both games have been relatively short, in between 10 to 15 minutes type of short, for example. And I have a lot of fun in both games, but it's very, very interesting because it was like the Arc games, we were going in, we'd met in the hour we'd played maybe 10 other players, and not one of them even ever showed one sign of aggression. I mean, we teamed up with 2 of them to take down some of the Arcs. I'm going to call them bots because they are bots ultimately, and that was kind of it. We then went our separate ways. My friend nearly burnt himself to death while trying to loot one of them. It was quite funny. But it's just quite interesting because then when we go to Marathon, the very first team we fought inside a hauler was our spawn point, with a team coming up one of the ladders with shotguns, and immediately we're straight off the hook firing. And I want to kind of talk about Marathon's progression compared to Arc, because I feel like Marathon's new player progression is significantly quicker than Arc's, and I think a lot of that is factored to the fact that a lot of the time when you're going up against people in Marathon compared to Arc, and when you're doing runs in Marathon compared to Arc, is you're going to get in those PvP fights, significantly more in Marathon. What makes sense, it's more of a PvP focused game. It's just really, really interesting because if you're fighting more people more often, means you're going to get higher quality loot more often than not. And for example, my friend in Marathon, what I will say you level up significantly quicker, is about level 7, I believe, level 8. His total playtime floats around 2 to 3 hours, same with mine in Arc. And we've already gotten him a good few like blue tier weapons, a good few blue tier shields, etc., blue tier like backpacks and stuff, compared to Ark, where I'm still currently running grey and green loot. And obviously Ark has been out for a lot longer. I'm not too sure when the last wipe in Ark Raiders was. But because we're not fighting people actively, we're not getting that higher quality loot more often. And because of that, I feel like I'm progressing significantly slower. Now, that's not me complaining about like progressing slower, because it's actually quite nice, to be fair, coming off of Marathon, where almost every single game is make or break for your bank account, especially with Cryo Archive. I obviously have a lot more time in Marathon, so I have a lot more better gear, but from the main idea of my friend's perspective, he's getting decent loot at a decent rate, and I'd say I'm getting mediocre loot in Ark at quite a slow rate. And again, that's kind of just because of how heavy the PvP versus PvE focus is on both of the games. And that's something that I think really, really distinguishes these two games. And I think on top of that, I think one of the more important things to know is what type of player are you and what interests you. Ark Raiders is an interesting game to my friend specifically because he likes to play a lot of those more casual games, but then he enjoys Marathon quite a lot because Marathon has a lot of PvP. And so the position that we're kind of in with both of these games is, and bearing in mind he's the Ark guy and I'm the Marathon guy, and the general thing that is coming from both of us is that we both enjoy the games and for their own reasons. And so if you're a Marathon player and you want to buy Ark, I think go for it. And I think if you're an Ark Raider player and you want to buy Marathon, I say go for it. I think both games strive really, really well in their area of expertise. And I think PvE is Ark Raiders' area of expertise by miles compared to Marathon, where PvP is the area of expertise by complete miles. I can't really comment on games like Tarkov or Delta Force because I've barely played Delta Force for like maybe 2 runs, and I'm not a PC gamer, so I don't have Tarkov. But it is just really, really interesting to see how both games kind of compare to one another. And having played Ark Raiders, I really, 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 really want to talk to some of the people that own both games, or own Ark, and specifically never tried Marathon because of their list of reasons. And if PvP is one of those major reasons, then I understand that completely. But if one of their reasons are things like menus, they're tripping fucking balls, because Ark Raiders has some of the most confusing menus I've ever seen in any extraction shooter. I've played quite a few. Again, other than Tarkov, I've played Delta Force, I've played Marathon, I've played Ark, I've played Vigor, and I've played DMZ. And by far, and by a long mile, I think Delta Force has the worst at UI first, and then I think it's Ark, and then maybe Marathon. I feel like Marathon and Hunt can kind of be tied together because both their menus are alright. But it's just really, really interesting that Marathon got so much heat for having, air quotes, such bad menus, but then they're significantly easier to understand. And sure, maybe that's just a thing that you learn with playtime at Ark, but that's the exact same with Marathon, because every extraction shooter is always going to have messy menus, because you have your loadout, your armory, your stores, your actual stores, your battle pass tabs. You have all of these things in pretty much all of these games, and yet every single complaint I've seen about Marathon when it comes to menus is just like amplified in Ark. And I'm not even trying to be biased here, I'm trying to see both sides of the coin here, but it's really, really confusing when there's so many negativities out there talked about when it comes to like Marathon and how Marathon looks and its UI compared to Ark, where people praise Ark. I haven't really heard much on its UI, but it's no better. In fact, I'd argue it's worse. But what are some features that I'd love to see in one game get transferred to another? And I think one of the most important ones is something really, really small that I kind of think sucks that Marathon doesn't have. But Ark Raiders has a really, really cool feature where when you complete a run, or a raid, in that game, it shows you kind of like a heat map of where you've been and what you did, what enemies you encounter. And you can kind of learn from that, learn from your mistakes per se, and kind of to carry that into your next games. So in one of my games, for example, I died to a Rocketeer, and I noted in my head, oh, I died to a Rocketeer over there. Maybe there'll be another one over there. I don't know. I haven't played enough, but I'm going to try and avoid that area in general because that area doesn't really seem like it's going to pay out very well for me. I avoided it, and it turned out great for me, and then in the very next run. I will say, one of the things I'd love to see in Arc Raiders, and maybe this is something that I've missed in the menus, I'm not sure, but when you track an item in Marathon and you search a container and you find it, it is really, really obvious that you found it. The searching, like, animation of in Marathon being an eye and in Arc Raiders being a left to right sweep. In Marathon, normally it is just a grey eye, but if you find something you're tracking, it is a bright yellow eye, and that is something I would really, really love to see in a game like Arc Raiders. And even on your map, when you open your map, each area that has something you're tracking will have a yellow eye next to it, what makes it really, really easy to track what you want and when you want and where you're trying to go. And that's kind of a thing that I would love to see in Arc Raiders improve on, is just general clarity. I'd also love to see Arc Raiders have less stuff, in a way. I feel like there's so many like pieces of random stuff you pick up in Arc Raiders that you look at and it just says this item's recyclable and it has nothing else. It has no other use. Other, like, some items are for crafting, some other items are for this, some other items for value, etc., etc. But the stuff that are specifically recyclable, I would really, really love to see that those items not be recyclable and rather just be the item that they're trying to be. If I pick up something and it says this turns into 2 metal, or like 2 scrap metal, why are you giving me that item? Give me the scrap metal. In Marathon, there's nothing like that. If you get an unstable biomass, it is an unstable biomass. If you get a reclaimed biostripping, it is a reclaimed biostripping. There's no scrapping it and turning it into another thing, or doing this with it and turning it into that. And that's something that I'd really, really like to see Arc Raiders inherit. I will also say that this is kind of just a general complaint about Marathon, but it's something that Arc Raiders does. You can only buy things once in the store, whereas Marathon has it so you can buy weapon stickers and charms multiple times for different guns. That's just absurd, and I hope that's something that will get changed out of Marathon eventually in time. But as of right now, it is kind of just a wait and see, what is something I'm not really a big fan of. But either way, I think both games really, really do strive in their areas, and I think if you are a Marathon player and maybe you're looking for something more PvE focused, maybe you've played a lot of Destiny and you're not getting along with it right now, maybe you're a TFT player, hello if you are, I love you, and maybe you're getting a bit bored and maybe some updates aren't holding your attention, a Warframe player, a Fallout 76 player, a Fallout RPG enjoyer, if you're just looking for something that is more focused on PvE, where you can play with a couple friends, then I think Arc Raiders does that really, really well. And I think for as close as what a PvE extraction shooter can be, I think Arc Raiders has done that really, really, really well. Because the PvP, in that game is so infrequent and so rare, it kind of actually feels quite nice to be shot by another player, compared to in Marathon, where I feel like it's kind of the other way around, you know? You're constantly fighting people all the time. It's really, really nice when a Tox Warden spawns in and you go fight that guy. Or a Flame Warden, for example. These are just really, really small things that I think the games both do really, really well in their own areas. And again, I haven't played too much Arc Raiders, so I can't really comment on how weapon upgrading and everything feels. But something I love about Marathon compared to Arc Raiders is upgrading a weapon is as simple as the attachments that go on the weapon. What make it better. You can take a grey weapon and make it gold or purple, just a handful of attachments, compared to Arc Raiders that each weapon has its own tier system, where you can get like a Pharaoh, for example, and make it go from a Pharaoh 1 to a Pharaoh 4, I think is the highest I've ever seen. I'm not too sure how much higher it goes, but I'm going to say 4 for now. And that's cool and all, but the only real difference is things like higher durability was a system I hate. I'm going to be so real, I fucking hate. Like, you're going to be losing your shit anyway in extraction shooters. Do we really have to have a durability bar? This isn't fucking Minecraft. And increases like your, like, how fast you reload your gun and stuff. Like, that's cool and all, but I prefer how Marathon just does that on attachments, and the attachments are tiered. And I think, obviously, depending on how good your attachment tier is, translates to how good your weapon tier is. I think it's really, really easy and really simple to understand that if you have a grey V11 punch, or even a green one, sorry, with, I don't know, a suppression dampener and a better magazine, and you find a blue one with the exact same 2 attachments, you don't have to be a smartass to know that the one with those 2 attachments is better, compared to Arc, where I found myself being like, I have this Pharaoh 1, and that's cool and all, but I've also now got a like a Kettle 2, and obviously they're different guns for their own reasons, but should I be using the Kettle 2 over the Pharaoh 1 because it has better stats in this area and that area? And it's like, it's for one of the complaints about Marathon being I should be able to tell what I'm looting and grabbing the exact moment I see it. that same problem persists and in Ark, where it's like a Pharaoh 1 and a Pharaoh 4 is the exact same. The only difference is the number at the end of the name. And I'm not gonna notice if I'm, as people like to say about Marathon, if I'm getting shot at and I need to quickly loot and get my stuff sorted, I'm not gonna be looking at if this gun I'm trying to loot is number 1 or number 3. I'm gonna be looking at it, that's the gun name I like, I'm taking that and I'm going. And if I've gone ahead and traded out my I don't know, use Kettle again, my Kettle 4 for a Pharaoh 1 because I prefer the Pharaoh 1 on a whim, that's not great. Whereas if I'm looting somebody in Marathon and I have my green V11 punch and I see a blue M77 and I prefer the M77 and that's better. Even if I see a green M77 and I've got a blue punch, I'm going to take the M77 because I know it's a better gun, and I don't get a green M77 because I know that's a better gun. I know it has worse attachments at the time, but that's a better gun suited for me in the moment that I prefer, for example. And I think both games, my entire point in this video, and what I'm going to round it out here, is I think both games really do thrive in their areas. I think both of them have a decent amount of problems, and I think so far from my playtime, I think Marathon has less problems. Maybe that's a skill issue, maybe that is literally just a thing I learn with time with Ark, but I'm pretty much only playing with my friend. And I honestly don't really like playing Ark by myself. The few runs I have done have been fine. It's just the arcs are really strong and my gear is really weak, so obviously I'm not going to fucking have fun dying every single time I try and play the game. But it is just really, really interesting coming from Marathon, where I also don't really play Marathon too much solo, and that is mainly because I actually talked about this, I made a Twitter post about this and I got fucking shit talked because of it, and I kind of found it funny. But I don't play Marathon solo much because my team is literally so fucking good that the game isn't fun when I'm playing solo or with like crew fields. I have a team that I pretty much only exclusively play on weekends with, because they have they live firstly halfway across the world, and secondly they have quite heavy work schedules right now. And so I only really play with those guys because I know we're a good team. I mean, during the last time that we played, we played for like, it was like a 12-hour day, I can't lie. And the first few hours are fine. We had 1 hour that was just non-stop dying on free kits. And then we all took golds in. We just said, fuck it, let's just full send it. And then we had like maybe genuinely 5 hours without dying where we just made like generational wealth. I think my vault went up by like 90k and I made like nearly 150k in my wallet that day. It was a lot of fucking profit is what I'm trying to say. We had a bunch of keys, bunch of key templates, and obviously a lot of this is stuff that I know because of my game knowledge, but it was just really, really interesting to go from that in Marathon, where I play with a team we do so well, to Ark, where I'm playing with somebody and it's not going, like, I wouldn't say it's going too, like, bad, but it's just our like, priorities are quite weak, because as much as he got the game a couple weeks ago, he hasn't played too much himself. But again, he is the Ark guy in this situation. But back to kind of my point I was making there, is Marathon is kind of hard to enjoy as a solo player, as a purely solo player, because crew fields always have free kits. I don't know why you can still run into team, like if you are bringing gear yourself, I have like a guarantee of like 5k or something. Like if I bring a 5k loadout, I shouldn't get paired with teammates that have free kits. I personally, I just think there should be, like, in my perfect world, there should be like a gear anti per se when it comes to your crew fill, where if I'm bringing 5k of gear, somebody who's bringing 2k less or 2k above should be crew filled into my team, and somebody who's bringing like 3k below or 3k above shouldn't be. Maybe make it a bit more lenient, maybe like 4k, 3k, I don't know. But it's really annoying when you're in a position where, like I am with the game, where I'm quite literally suffering from success. I'm so rich and I'm so well off in my loot that my entire vault is basically only purples and golds. I don't have any weapons below that rarity, and I don't want to bring any of them into a fucking crew fill game because I know I'm going to lose it, because I'm going to have like fucking free kit teammates. But again, there's no problem with them. I don't know how that is in Ark Raiders, because I've only actually played solo or with my friend, where that game has duos. I will say that's something that Marathon really needs to get on and release. I'm kind of surprised that, despite the experiments being out, they haven't actually fully released the duos yet. And last thing that I'll kind of say about both the games is that I enjoy them both. I will happily sit here and say that I've had wow moments on both. I'll put a clip up here, for example, for the last few minutes of this video, of where my friend was quite late to an exfil on Ark, and He couldn't quite sneak in at the last moment as the door was closing, but he recalled the elevator and he managed to come in and it picked him up, and it was really, really cool. It was a really hype moment, and he had loads of stuff that we both needed. So that was really, really cool. That isn't, for the record, I guess you could say that's my fault, but I did run the timer out on the exfil, and he said he was going to be quicker, and he didn't. He was looting still, so, Grade nearly got him killed. But that was really hype, and then we went into Marathon, literally, the very next 2 games later we played, rather, and we had a team, that was the Hauler game I was talking about earlier, where we just got rushed off the start of Hauler and immediately went to, a massive gunfight, and he got generational wealth of tons and tons of blue gear, and I mean he was feeling amazing after that. And the same way that if I was to play in Ark, we got some wires and that felt amazing because it was related to our quests. And I think that's something that I think extraction shooters do really, really well, is in general, no matter what extraction shooter you're playing, if you're a Tarkov guy, if you're an Ark guy, if you're a Marathon guy, a Delta Force guy, whatever, Vigor guy, one thing that extraction shooters will always nail is that adrenaline feeling, that rush, that holy shit, I just got X, Y, and Z type of feeling, And that could literally be as simple as apricots and wires, or that could be something like a gold shield and a unique watchtower sniper in Marathon, And I think the easy way to round out this video and to make myself happy and in a position that I like and to make other people happy is, if you're a Marathon player and you really, really like Marathon's PvP, and you're maybe thinking Ark Raiders PvP will be as good, it won't be, because there is basically none. However, if you're thinking maybe Ark Raiders PvE will be brilliant, I think Ark Raiders PvE is probably better than Marathon's from what I've played. If you are a Ark Raiders player who's damn, I wish this game had more PvP, try Marathon. Don't give it an hour, give it 2 or 3 and see if it clicks, and then see if you're continuing to bash out runs, because that's how my friend felt. He wasn't sure in the first hour, by the time he was by the second and the third, he was in love with it. And if you're if you're an Ark Raiders player, so he's oh, maybe I should try Marathon for the PvE, don't. That's all I say. Marathon's PvE is fine, but it's not great. It's not the best. The AI themselves are smart. The plethora of enemies you fight are fine. It's just compared to the boys over at Ark, it is not pulling its weight in the PvE area. And that's where I'd like to leave this video at. Both of them are good. Both of them are fun. And for me now, owning both and playing both is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, a 2 cake situation. I was enjoying my 1 cake quite a fucking lot with Marathon, and I still enjoy my 1 cake with Marathon. However, I will happily sit here and say that my 2nd cake is also pretty goddamn yummy.